Hey everyone, Ripley Sellers with Bob's Watches. I'm here in the studio with Justin for another episode of Vintage of the Week, where we pull aside one remarkable vintage timepiece and share with you exactly why we love it. So, Justin, got a really exciting one here for us, vintage GMT, but first, quick wrist check. What are you wearing today?
Today, I'm going with what used to be what I thought was the best deal in Rolex, was the Oyster Perpetual, and I love this dial variant, that gray with the blue. I think it's a great looking watch. It's clean, and I say used to because now these things are nowhere near the price was just a few short years ago when you could buy this for like under $6,000 from Rolex, brand new, and you could actually get them. I loved it. I always thought, I said, if you want a new Rolex, you're looking for something inexpensive, I think you get a lot of watch for your money. Things have changed quite a bit as of recently with the new versions of these and all that, but I still think it's a beautiful watch and I love wearing it. It's really comfortable.
Absolutely,
it's really clean.
And that's the 39 as well, which I was really sad to see discontinued. 41 is just a bit too big for me. I can pull off the 36 just fine, but 39 was kind of like that Goldilocks size, so I was sad to see it go.
It is. It's kind of good for everyone. To me, the 41's good, the 40's good, but the 39 is kind of that sweet spot where, like you said, if it's just a little too big, I mean, it's not too small if you're into the bigger sizes, and yeah, 39's a good size. I was sad to see that one go as well. What do you got on today?
Just old reliable, got on my sub, 16610, and today it's on one of the Everest bands. I had no idea they made a short version of the standard strap. They have the long and they make a short one. I got little wrists, so I've been loving that.
Perfect
Super comfy.
fit. Yeah, I love the dive watches on the rubber straps. They're just so fitting, right? Like it's just so utilitarian.
Yeah, and these subs are famous for not having the best bracelet, so it's nice to not always be committed to it.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Yes, we got a beautiful 1675 GMT today, right?
Yeah, so I mean, like, close your eyes, think about the quintessential vintage Rolex GMT. And it's this watch.
It is.
It's this watch. It's not the first GMT, but the 1675 was the second one. And it was really the point in the model's history where it became its own watch.
Right.
So GMT first appeared about 54, 55, but as the 654-2. So at this point, it's more or less kind of like a GMT turnograph, so you got smaller case, no crown guards, at that point Bakelite bezel.
Right.
59, we get the 1675, so at this point 40 mil crown guards, and it's now is the point where it is a GMT Master.
Right.
And then this one's obviously a beautiful example.
This one's great. I love these watches. I love these this era with the matte dial and the big lume pots and the way they patina. I mean, we talk about vintage watches, how no two are the same, right? They never patina exactly the same, and there's different opinions on the color that people like. Some people like that really dark burnt orange. Some people like it really white and pristine. And for me, this is kind of the sweet spot. I want a little bit of patina. I want it to look older, I want it to look like it has some miles on it. But I don't necessarily love when it's just like 100% brown orange. That's too much for my personal taste, and I love this one. And on top of that, the color of the bezel I think has aged gorgeously.
The bezel's my favorite part of it, hands down.
Me too, absolutely. I think it's just so nice. The way, I mean, again, these go from everywhere from pretty much pristine new, they've been living in a safe deposit box their whole life, to where you almost can't even see the colors on the bezel, they're so faded, to like a purple and a light blue, and I mean, it just runs the whole gamut the way these things age. And this, like if I had to pick out the perfect color bezel, I think it would be this one.
Yeah, same. Bright red and blue, but not as deep as if it was like a service insert or a new one. You get that nice raspberry, bright, punchy red on the lower half. And then I also love the way on the upper half, you can almost see it here where it's darker on the inside. You can see from the way people
there's a little gradient.
Where it's washed out. I think it's beautiful. Condition's fantastic. And it's, I mean, the 1675 is a really diverse reference. So introduced in 59, they made it all the way up until about 1980. First ones had gilt dials, when all the matte dials came in thereafter. But for me, the matte dial is the one that just seems the most proper for the 1675. It's also significantly less expensive than its gilt dial sibling, but it just looks right on it. You know what I mean? When I think of a 1675, it has a matte dial. I can think of plenty of examples with gilt dials that are beautiful, but I don't know, just something about the white text with the red and the blue.
I agree. I love the matte dial. I think it looks great. It's good with the acrylic crystal. It's just kind of like a match made in heaven to me. And then it's also it feels a little more utilitarian, which, back when these came out, it was a very utilitarian watch. I mean, it was for pilots, and it was a tool watch, and it was made to be worn every day and used, and that kind of speaks to that a little bit, and I love it. I think it adds to the history, and I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Matte dial is the most tool-oriented dial that that Rolex has ever done, and this one also beautiful condition, nice symmetrical patina on the hour markers. I mean, it's just really a lovely watch. I believe this particular example is from 1978, so it's near the end of the 1675, so it's fully matured. It's exactly what it should be, and you get the matte dial. A bracelet too, it's 77, clasp code, so approximate, so original bracelet for the watch.
Bracelet,
yeah,
yes.
exactly. Which you also don't see all that often. Typically, they're worn, they're stretched,
they get worn out and changed out. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I like most about the bezel is when you get them really washed out, it doesn't really complement the bright red GMT hand as much. And on this one, it's a really cohesive look that is arguably better and more looks more correct to me than even like the new ceramic ones they're putting down.
Yes, that's a good point. You see, because I mean the GMT hand is protected. It's inside the crystal. They don't often wear at the same rate or the same look as the bezel, so you can kind of have that disjointed look where, like we talk about, some of these reds turn into like a purple color or a very light pink, which, I mean, if that's your thing and it looks great, but it will look different than the hand, and that continuity of the, this very similar color of the bezel to the hand, it's a nice touch.
Yeah, really, really great looking watch. And when you look at a matte dial 1675, it's a pretty good value, all things considered, in the landscape of vintage Rolex. Getting the gilt dialed equivalent of it will cost you quite a bit, but you still get all the vintage hallmark traits, acrylic crystal, matte dial, all that. And then you start looking at what a modern Pepsi would cost you.
Sure.
And you don't get any of the history. And this seems like a song, all things considered.
Yeah.
And to me, when I think of a Pepsi GMT, I'm not thinking of a GMT Master 2. It's this watch.
It's this watch.
This is the watch that first comes to mind. And this is also the one that you saw people wearing in doing cool stuff back in the day. Marlon Brando, Apocalypse Now, wearing a 1675 with the bezel removed. So you know what I mean? This was the one, countless soldiers wore them. It saw active duty pilots. This was produced long before they became luxury items. And I mean, for a pilot's watch and a flight tool, that looks gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's attainable, like you said. I mean, it's not, the old gilt dials are, they're something special in their own right, but this one is, especially if you're just getting into vintage Rolex or vintage watches, and you're looking for kind of a first piece, like, my God, you couldn't go wrong with the 1675, especially in an example like this. Another thing we're talking about is the condition, which is more appropriate for this watch because this watch is actually for sale, right? If you don't know, we sell these exact watches.
Yeah, this one is available for purchase. We keep saying how lovely the bezel is on this particular one. Well, this actual watch is for sale.
Yes, it makes a big difference.
We'll be hitting the
no
site.
two are the same. And you talk about the condition. I mean, you look at the bezel and you see, there's a couple scratches here and there. And you can tell it's been worn, but it's not destroyed. And so many of these older aluminum bezels, I mean, they scratch fairly easy. And when we talk about the kind of years of wear that these things have on them, and
chips, pitting, yeah.
I mean, so many of them just get so scratched up, which is kind of a cool look in its own right. Personally, I like I like a little bit of wear on it. I like it to look vintage. I like it to look old. Like it hasn't been living in your desk drawer, living in the safe. But I don't want it completely destroyed and all scratched up either. And I think this one is held up so nice for how old this watch is.
Yeah, truly. And I mean, I think arguably more than other Rolex references, you get the most variety among vintage GMTs because you have not just the multiple different colors of bezels, but the way those colors fade. This one's really lovely. If I had the money, I'd be going on the site and seeing what I can get for it.
I would be very happy with this.
But man, I have a hard time thinking of what more I would want out of a 1675.
I can't think of a whole lot more I'd want out of a 1675. I mean, if you're in the market for a vintage watch, especially like a GMT, I mean, if you're more into the dive, people gravitate. You're maybe more into the dive watches or more into the Daytonas or the GMTs. And I mean, there's a huge following for the GMTs. I mean, these things have a cult-like following.
It's the original red and blue watch.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Now you're going to find red and blue bezels on all sorts of things, but like, if you're going to go to the OG red and blue,
it started it all.
And although it's not the very first GMT, for me, this is the quintessential red and blue bezel.
I agree.
This is the one, and I think it would also be the one I would buy if I was going to be picking one up.
I agree with you 100% on that. Well, it's a beautiful watch. Like Ripley said, this one's actually for sale as of when this video goes live. So if you're in the market for a gorgeous vintage GMT, head over to Bob's Watches, take a look, and possibly add it to your collection. If Ripley doesn't get there first.
Yeah, if I don't get there first. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Vintage of the Week. Don't forget to tune in next time to see what we'll have for you.